My name is Lauren Whitmore, and I'm 24 years old. I work late nights at a diner, saving for community college. But tonight, I'm not thinking about tips or textbooks. I'm staring at the kitchen table where every wedding invitation sits neatly stacked, except mine. Everyone in my family got one. Everyone but me. I asked my mom, Marjorie, why. She didn't blink. She just leaned in, her voice low and sharp, because if you show up, you'll expose the truth. Her words cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard. Truth? What truth? She looked at me, silent, cold, like she wanted me to wonder forever. And in that silence, I felt it. Something dark was hiding in this family. Before we uncover this truth, kindly comment with where you are watching from. Like the video, and subscribe if you love seeing underdogs finally take their power back. I grew up being compared to my cousin Cassandra Whitmore. She was only 2 years older than me, 26 now, but she might as well have been born on a different planet. From the time we were kids, she was the one everybody praised. I was the one they barely noticed. I can still see the way my aunts would pat her hair at Christmas, telling her how pretty she looked, while mine frizzed in the corner. When we played piano recitals, they said Cassandra played like an angel. When I played, they asked me to keep it short because dessert was ready. It wasn't just favoritism, it was worship. And I was the afterthought standing right beside her. Now she was getting married at Willow Creek Banquet Hall, a glossy glass-walled venue in suburban Hartford where the chandeliers sparkled like they were imported from Paris. My family was buzzing about it for months. Everyone talked about the food, the flowers, the dress. Every detail was perfect because it was Cassandra's, and everyone got their shiny invitation. Everyone but me. It was hard to describe the way it felt, scrolling through Facebook and seeing my entire family posing at bridal showers I wasn't invited to. They laughed in pastel dresses while I was wiping tables at the diner. I wanted to hate Cassandra, but the truth was, she never needed to lift a finger. The whole family bent the world for her. She didn't even notice who got trampled in the process. One night after my shift, I sat in the back booth with a cup of stale coffee, scrolling through my phone. I landed on a picture Cassandra posted, her and Derek Shaw, her fiancé. He was tall, square-jawed, the kind of man who knew he looked good in every photo. His smile never reached his eyes, though. Something about it always felt slippery. Then I saw a comment someone left, quickly deleted but not before I caught it. Does Evelyn know about this? Evelyn was Cassandra's maid of honor. And suddenly, I remembered the way Evelyn laughed too hard at Derek's jokes, the way she adjusted her dress when he walked into a room. I brushed it off at first, but now the thought burrowed in. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself I was imagining things because I was bitter. But a week later, I overheard 2 women in line at the grocery store whispering about that Shaw guy who was spotted at a bar in New Haven, not with his fiancée. They didn't know me, didn't know I was related. I froze by the frozen peas, heart pounding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every look, every word. Cassandra was the golden child, but what if her golden future wasn't as perfect as everyone believed? The next day, as I wiped down the counter at work, my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was spam. The number wasn't saved. No name, just plain text. It read, "Ask why they don't want you there." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped a glass. The words were simple, but they set off an earthquake inside me. Whoever sent it knew something, knew more than me. I wanted to throw the phone away, pretend I never saw it, but I couldn't. My heart was racing too fast. I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply, just the read receipt. I sat there, staring at the empty screen, hearing my mom's cold voice in my head again, because if you show up, you'll expose the truth. What truth? Something was happening behind the scenes of Cassandra's perfect wedding, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't just excluded because they didn't love me. I was excluded because I was dangerous to them. And the worst part, I didn't even know why. If your family kept you out of an event like this, Would you confront them head-on or wait for proof? Comment what you'd do. And if you love seeing underdogs rise against the odds, like this video and subscribe. You don't want to miss what comes next. I knew I couldn't sit on that text forever. Whoever sent it was right. There was more to my family's rejection than just embarrassment or favoritism. Something deeper was buried under all their smiles and excuses. And I couldn't shake the words. Ask why they don't want you there. The first chance I had, I drove out to my dad's place. He lived on the edge of Hartford in the same tired brick house he'd kept after the divorce. The shutters needed painting, the porch light flickered, but it was home. My safe place, or at least it used to be. Dad, Ray Whitmore, had always been the quiet one in the family. He wasn't the type to start fights. He'd rather disappear into a football game than tell anyone how he really felt. But I needed answers. If anyone was going to be honest with me, it had to be him. When I walked in, he was in his recliner, the TV humming in the background. The smell of old leather and takeout cartons filled the living room. He looked up, surprised. "Lauren," he said, smiling weakly. "Didn't expect you tonight." I sat across from him, my hands twisting in my lap. "Dad, I need to ask you something. About Cassandra's wedding." His smile faltered. He leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he already knew where this was going. "You know your Aunt Judith's got a lot of influence when it comes to family events," he muttered. "She wants things a certain way." I leaned forward. "That's not an answer. Why don't they want me there? Why am I the only cousin left off the list? Someone even texted me about it. Dad, they said to ask why." He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the TV like he hoped I'd get distracted by the game. "I don't want to stir anything up. You know how your aunt is." My throat tightened. "So you're just going to let them shut me out? Pretend I don't exist?" He sighed heavily, then stood up and walked into the kitchen. I followed, watching him fuss with the coffee maker even though it was nearly midnight. That was his thing. When conversations got hard, he made coffee he didn't even want. "I'll talk to Marjorie," he finally said, his back to me. My mom. My mother, who had barely spoken 2 words about the wedding except to say it was complicated. I crossed my arms. "You'll talk to her? That's it. That's supposed to fix anything." He turned then, and for a moment his face softened. He pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug that made me feel like a little kid again, safe against his chest. "I'll handle it, kiddo. Don't beat yourself up. I'll talk to her, I promise." I wanted so badly to believe him. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he could cut through the walls everyone had built around me. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as I thought. But that hope didn't last long. The next weekend, there was a family dinner at Aunt Judith's house. I wasn't invited officially, but Dad insisted I come along with him, and I wasn't about to pass up the chance. Maybe if I showed up, someone would finally give me straight answers. Judith's house was just as I remembered it, overdecorated, full of expensive furniture that nobody was allowed to sit on, the air heavy with perfume and roast beef. Cassandra's engagement photos covered the walls, her smiling in white lace, Derek looking every bit the polished groom-to-be. It was like a shrine. When I walked in behind Dad, the room went quiet. Not completely, but just enough for me to notice. Forks scraped against plates a little slower. Conversations paused, then picked up again in hushed tones. And the looks, those quick, cutting glances I'd grown up with, were back in full force. Judith spotted me from across the table. Her mouth curled into a sneer. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence. Didn't realize we were extending invitations this far down the family tree." A few cousins chuckled under their breath. My face burned. I wanted to snap back, but my dad gave me a warning look, like don't make it worse. I sat in silence, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate while Judith kept tossing digs my way. "Some people just don't understand boundaries," she said loudly at one point. It's sad, really. The whispers didn't stop, either. Every time I walked into the kitchen to refill my water, I heard murmurs behind me. I couldn't catch full sentences, just fragments. She shouldn't be here. Can't risk it. Judith's right. I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palms. It was like being 12 years old again, invisible unless someone wanted to laugh at me. Dad must have seen the storm brewing in my eyes, because later that night, as we stood by the door putting our coats on, he leaned close and whispered, "I'll talk to Marjorie tomorrow. Don't lose faith." I nodded, though my throat was tight. But then it happened. I was walking back through the hall to grab my scarf when I froze. Judith's voice drifted from the dining room, low and sharp. "If she shows up, everything falls apart." I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding in my ears. Everything falls apart. They weren't just keeping me away because I embarrassed them. They were afraid of me, afraid of what I knew, or maybe of what I might find out. For the first time in my life, my family's coldness wasn't just cruelty. It was strategy, and I wasn't going to let them win. Do you think family secrets should stay buried? Or should the truth always come out, no matter how much it hurts? I couldn't sleep after what I overheard at Judith's house. If she shows up, everything falls apart. Those words chased me through the night, echoing in every shadow of my apartment. I replayed them again and again, wondering what it meant. What could I possibly do that would tear down a wedding as perfect and untouchable as Cassandra's? I didn't have to wait long for the answer. 2 days later, I was on my way back from my shift at the diner when I stopped at a little cafe near downtown Hartford. I'd been running on coffee and nerves, and I figured the noise of the place might distract me. But when I walked in, I froze. Derek was there. Cassandra's perfect fiancé, the one she never shut up about, sitting in the corner booth with his arm draped around Evelyn Marks. Evelyn, Cassandra's best friend since middle school. Evelyn, who was supposed to be her maid of honor. Evelyn, who smiled like the world belonged to her. They weren't being discreet. Derek had his hand on hers, his lips brushing her ear, and then, without hesitation, he leaned in and kissed her. Full, open, like he'd done it 100 times before. I stood there like an idiot, my to-go cup shaking in my hand, my heart hammering so hard it made my vision blur. Nobody noticed me, not him, not Evelyn. They were lost in each other, laughing, whispering, kissing again like Cassandra was just some extra in their story. I stumbled out the door before they saw me. The cold air slapped me awake, but it didn't cool the fire burning in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run straight to Cassandra and tear the veil off her perfect fantasy. But then another thought hit me, sharp and ugly. My family already knew. That night, I went back to my mom's house. She was in the kitchen, humming softly as she chopped vegetables, acting like the world was fine and normal. I slammed my bag down on the counter. "Did you know?" I demanded. She looked up, startled. "Lauren, what on earth?" "Don't play dumb. Derek, Evelyn. I saw them today." For a second, her face flickered, a flash of recognition, guilt maybe, then it hardened. She set down the knife, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and sighed like I was the problem. "This is exactly why you weren't invited," she said flatly. My stomach dropped. You knew he was cheating on her, and you stayed quiet? You let Cassandra plan this whole thing, parade around like everything's perfect." Her eyes narrowed. "It's not our business to ruin her day. Sometimes silence is better than truth." "Silence." My voice cracked. "Mom, she's marrying him. She's going to stand up in front of everyone and pledge her life to a liar." She leaned in, her voice low and sharp. "Do you think she'd thank you for humiliating her in front of the entire family? Do you think she'd forgive you? No, Lauren. She'd hate you. They all would." I shook my head, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. "This isn't about protecting her. This is about protecting you. Protecting your precious image, your perfect family. You'd rather I stay quiet than admit everything's rotten underneath." Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist so tightly I flinched. Her eyes locked on mine, colder than I'd ever seen them. "If you open your mouth," she hissed, You out of this family for good." The words cut deeper than I expected. She wasn't bluffing. She'd do it. Erase me like I never existed. I pulled my wrist free, my breath shaking, and backed away. For a second, neither of us moved. The kitchen felt suffocating, the clock ticking louder with every passing second. Then I turned and walked out, the door slamming behind me. Outside, the night was dark and bitter, but it was clearer than anything inside that house. I finally understood what Judith meant. If I showed up, everything would fall apart. Because I was holding the one truth they were desperate to keep buried. The question was no longer whether I'd speak. It was when. If your mom knew the groom was cheating, would you tell your cousin or keep quiet? I couldn't get her voice out of my head. If you open your mouth, you're out of this family for good. My own mother, spitting those words at me like I was nothing but a stain she wanted scrubbed away. I'd heard her say cruel things before, but never with that much venom. Never with that kind of finality. I sat in my car outside her house long after the porch light clicked off. My hands were clenched on the steering wheel, knuckles white, the engine off, the cold creeping in through the windows. I thought about driving straight to Cassandra's place, pounding on her door, and blurting it all out. Derek, Evelyn, the cheating, the lies, all of it. But then I pictured her face. Not the teary, grateful look I wanted her to have, but the disgusted glare I knew she'd give me. Cassandra didn't see me as a sister, or even as an equal. To her, I was a shadow, always there, never shining. If I told her the truth, she'd probably just laugh, tell me I was jealous, and slam the door in my face. And maybe that was the cruelest part. She wasn't the victim in her own mind. She was still the golden girl, the one who deserved a fairy tale wedding, even if the prince was a fraud. By the time I pulled away and headed back to my apartment, my chest felt like it was splitting in two. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my bed in the tiny apartment I'd been scraping to afford with tips from the diner, scrolling through social media. Cassandra's face was everywhere. Her bridal shower photos were up, posted just an hour ago. The caption read, "Couldn't feel more blessed. Counting down the days until forever with my love. Forever with my love." My stomach twisted. In the pictures, she glowed in white lace, surrounded by bridesmaids holding champagne glasses. Evelyn stood right beside her, smiling so wide you'd think her heart was pure. Derek wasn't even in the photos, but he was in every comment Cassandra wrote. "Can't wait to marry my soulmate. The man who makes me whole." I felt bile rise in my throat. Then came the comments. Little jabs from family members and so-called friends. One of my cousins had written under a group shot, "Too bad not everyone in the family could be here, but maybe that's for the best." The laughing emoji stung worse than any slap. It was like they'd all agreed to keep me in the role of the outcast, the embarrassment, the mistake who never got things right. And the cruelest thing? I didn't even have anyone to talk to about it. By the time morning rolled around, my eyes were raw and swollen. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the old photo of my grandma, my only real ally when she was alive. She'd always told me, "Never let them silence you, Lauren. Truth has a way of breaking chains." I pressed the frame to my chest, tears dripping onto the glass. "What would you want me to do?" I whispered. "Tell her and watch them destroy me? Or keep quiet and let her walk into this nightmare?" Silence answered me, the kind that fills every corner of a lonely apartment. The choice tore at me. Protect Cassandra, the cousin who had spent her whole life making me feel small, or protect myself, the only person who had ever really looked out for me. I stared at my cracked phone screen, Derek's name practically glowing in my mind. I had the power to ruin him. But power and safety aren't the same thing. And every time I thought about opening my mouth, I heard my mom's hiss again. "You're out of this family for good." That night, when I finally crawled into bed, I swore I heard my phone buzz. I grabbed it with trembling hands, half expecting another cruel comment, another photo reminder that I was being erased. But it wasn't that. It was a new text from the same blocked number that had sent me the first message. This time, There was no cryptic riddle, no vague warning, just a name. Jake Turner. Then another bubble popped up. We need to talk. You don't know the half of it. My heart stopped. Derek's old co-worker. I remembered seeing Jake's name tagged in some posts years back when Derek first got his fancy corporate job. If Jake was reaching out now, it meant Derek's secrets went deeper than Evelyn. Deeper than Cassandra's blind devotion. I sat up in bed, clutching my phone so tightly my fingers went numb. I thought I knew the truth. But Jake's words made one thing terrifyingly clear. I had only scratched the surface. Would you tell your cousin if you knew her fiancé was cheating, or would you keep quiet to protect yourself? I never thought a stranger's name on a phone screen could shake me this much. Jake Turner, Derek's old co-worker, a man I'd only seen in passing, tagged in company photos years ago, smiling beside Derek at holiday parties in pressed suits. I almost ignored the text. For all I knew, it could have been some scam, some prank, another way to humiliate me. But the words kept echoing, you don't know the half of it. Against every instinct telling me to leave it alone, I typed back. What do you mean? The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, then returned. Meet me. Dunkin' on Maple Avenue tomorrow at 9. Don't bring anyone. I hardly slept that night. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed fire. By the time the sun cracked through my blinds, I was already dressed, already pacing, already regretting agreeing. The Dunkin' smelled like burnt coffee and sugar glaze. I sat in the corner booth, bouncing my leg, scanning every man who walked in. Finally, a tall guy in his 30s, with tired eyes and a messy beard, slid into the booth across from me without asking. You must be Lauren. I nodded, clutching my cup. He leaned forward, his voice low. I used to work with Derek. He's not who he pretends to be. And your mom, she's not innocent either. I froze. What are you talking about? Jake looked around, then pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. He slid it across the table. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were copies of financial documents, bank statements, withdrawals, transfers. The numbers didn't make sense at first, until one name jumped out at me like a punch. Whitmore Family Trust. My throat closed. This is my grandma's account. Her pension. Jake nodded grimly. I recognized your mom's name when I saw the paperwork. Marjorie signed off on withdrawals right after your grandmother passed. The money should have gone to you, but it didn't. It went to a joint account, Derek and Cassandra's wedding fund. I couldn't breathe. The diner noise blurred around me. People laughed, a blender word, but all I heard was the thundering in my ears. She stole my inheritance, I whispered. Jake didn't soften it. She drained it, every cent, and Derek helped her. The betrayal hit harder than Derek's cheating ever could. My own mother, my blood. Not only had she silenced me, not only had she exiled me from the family wedding, she had gutted my future to make Cassandra shine. I stumbled out of the Dunkin', with the envelope clutched to my chest, the cold air slapping my face. I felt sick. I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. The rest of the day blurred. I went to work at the diner, dropped plates, forgot orders. My manager chewed me out, but I barely heard her. All I saw were those numbers, those signatures, my mother's neat handwriting signing away what was supposed to be mine. That night, I tore through my apartment, searching every drawer, every box. Old mail, files, tax forms. I needed proof that the documents were real. Hours later, buried under a stack of envelopes I hadn't touched since Grandma's funeral, I found it. A letter from the pension office. My name listed as beneficiary. My chest caved as I read it. It was true. Every word Jake had said. The money should have come to me. My mother had stolen it. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the paper. Rage like I'd never known before surged through me, hotter than fire, sharper than glass. All those years she'd sneered at me, called me ungrateful, told me I was a burden, and all along she'd been stealing from me. I sat on my bed, shaking, the pension letter in one hand, Jake's envelope in the other. For the first time in my life, I didn't just feel like the family outcast. I felt dangerous. I wasn't just holding secrets anymore. I was holding dynamite. And the wedding was the match. Would you expose both the cheating and the money, or would you stay silent? The decision came to me late at night, when the city outside my window had gone quiet, and the only sound was the hum of my fridge. I sat at the edge of my bed with the documents spread out in front of me, the damning evidence of what Marjorie and Derek had done, what Cassandra was happily benefiting from. My hand shook, not because I was scared, but because the rage inside me was no longer something I could contain. It burned steady, clear, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the powerless daughter shoved aside. I felt dangerous. I knew I couldn't just expose Derek's affair anymore. That would be too small, too easy for them to spin into their version of events. No, this had to be bigger. They had stolen from me, from Grandma's pension, from the woman who raised me when no one else would. They thought they'd buried that truth with her, but now I had it in my hands. And I swore to myself that I would not just expose Derek. I would bring everything down. The thought of Cassandra's picture-perfect smile plastered on Instagram, flaunting the fairy-tale wedding she believed she deserved, made my stomach twist. It wasn't just about Derek betraying me anymore. It was about all of them, every single one who stood by while I was left with nothing. They had built their happiness on the ashes of my life, and I was done letting them win. I started planning quietly. The first step was simple: protect what I had. I scanned every document Jake and I uncovered, saving them on encrypted drives, backing them up in places no one would think to look. I bought a Bona phone, the kind you paid for in cash, and I used it only to talk to Jake. He was cautious at first, reluctant to go further, but when I reminded him of how Derek had used and discarded him, his bitterness resurfaced. "You're not in this alone," he told me one night over the phone, his voice low and steady. "If you're going to war, I'm with you." And I believed him. I needed to. Together, we pieced together more proof: financial transfers, hidden accounts, email threads that showed Marjorie's greedy fingerprints all over the theft. Jake even managed to get screenshots of conversations where Derek bragged about finally having the funds to give Cassandra the wedding of the year. I wanted to throw up reading it. My grandmother's sacrifice, her life savings meant to keep me secure, were poured into Cassandra's fairy tale. But I didn't rush. I couldn't afford mistakes. Every move I made had to be precise. I copied documents late at night, slipping them into a folder I hid beneath my mattress. I practiced conversations in my head, what I would say when the moment finally came. I watched Cassandra's posts, every smiling photo, every champagne glass raised with her bridesmaids, each caption about her dream day, and I let the anger harden into resolve. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. Just when I was building the storm that would sweep them all away, my dad called me. His voice was softer than usual, almost rehearsed. "Lauren," he said, "I want to make things right." I nearly laughed, but I let him talk. He told me he'd been thinking about me, about how hard things had been. He said he wanted me to be part of Cassandra's big day, that family should be together no matter what. I listened in silence, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might crack. Then he made his offer, a seat at the wedding. Right there, next to them. "But only if you promise to let the past stay in the past," he said. "No drama. No bringing up old wounds. This is Cassandra's moment. Don't ruin it for her." I felt my chest tighten. It was so on brand for him, dangling scraps of acceptance in exchange for my silence. My blood boiled as he went on about moving forward and healing as a family. He didn't want healing. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me erased. For a second, though, I'll admit it, I felt that tug. That pathetic, desperate tug of wanting to belong. To sit there, even on the edge, and pretend I was part of something. To not be the outcast. It was the false hope I hadn't asked for, but part of me craved. I closed my eyes, picturing Grandma's face in the photo I kept by my bed. She had never begged for a seat at their table. She had built her own, even when she was alone. And she had taught me that dignity wasn't something you bargained away. I knew what I had to do. "Thanks, Dad," I said softly. "I'll be there." I could hear the relief in his sigh, the smugness of a man who thought he'd just won. But when I hung up the phone, I whispered to myself in the silence of my apartment, the words steady and sharp as glass. "I'll be there, but not the way you think." And in that moment, the plan shifted from anger to precision. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they had silenced me with the promise of inclusion. But they had no idea what I was about to unleash. Would you expose both the cheating and the money? The night of the rehearsal dinner felt like the calm before a storm. Willow Creek Country Club stood lit up like some golden cathedral in the middle of a dark field, its sprawling windows glowing against the black sky. From the outside, I could hear the hum of laughter, the clinking of silverware, the kind of music meant to signal wealth and celebration. I stayed in the shadows near the side of the building, my breath fogging the glass as I craned just close enough to hear. This wasn't just any rehearsal dinner. It was their moment, the warm-up to the big show. Cassandra and Derek, hand in hand, ready to put on the performance of their lives. But I wasn't here to clap. I wasn't here to forgive or forget. I was here to watch, to listen, to gather every last detail that could prove useful when the curtain finally fell. The smell of expensive food wafted through the night air, filet mignon, roasted vegetables, wine that cost more than my rent. I felt a bitterness rise in my throat. My grandmother's pension was cooking on those plates, simmering in those glasses, burning away with every toast raised inside that glittering hole. Through the open balcony doors, I caught Aunt Judith's voice, shrill and smug as ever. "They spared no expense, none at all," she said, her laugh sharp enough to slice through the music. "Do you know this wedding is going to cost more than my entire house? And it's worth every penny. Cassandra deserves nothing less." I gripped the edge of the wall, my nails biting into the brick. Every penny. My grandmother's pennies. The stolen money being paraded as a gift. Then Evelyn's voice floated through, quieter, edged with something nervous. I leaned closer. She was seated near Derek. I could tell by the angle of her glances, the way her voice trembled in his direction. "You've done well for yourself, Derek. Cassandra is lucky." Her tone lingered, almost longing, and I didn't miss the way Derek chuckled low in response. The kind of chuckle meant to remind her of something they'd never speak out loud again. My stomach turned. Evelyn wasn't just a quiet observer. She was still in it somehow, still carrying pieces of him in her eyes, even as he sat beside Cassandra. I shifted closer to the window, the gravel beneath my feet crunching too loud in the silence between their words. I froze. Inside, Judith paused mid-story and glanced toward the door. My pulse hammered in my ears. I pressed myself flat against the wall, praying no one stepped outside for air, that the laughter and wine would keep them distracted. A waiter brushed past, carrying a tray of half-empty glasses, and the door swung open wider for a moment. I caught sight of Derek's smug grin, Cassandra's sparkling dress, Judith's animated hand gestures as she bragged louder than anyone else, and Evelyn, watching Derek when she thought no one noticed. The door closed again, muffling the sound, and I exhaled slowly. That was too close. Still, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I needed to know how deep their arrogance went, how blind Cassandra was to the cracks forming right under her. Judith's voice carried again, louder now, almost drunkenly proud. "Can you believe it? The Towner family pulling this off. It's like something out of a magazine. Derek really secured himself well. And Cassandra, oh, she's practically royalty now." Their words sliced through me. Every toast, every laugh, every compliment was built on lies and theft. I stepped back, ready to retreat before I lost control of myself completely. My heart raced, my palms slick against the rough wall. One wrong move and I'd be caught in the open, standing outside like some bitter ghost. And then it happened. The door behind me creaked. I spun, too late. The golden light from inside spilled onto the dark pavement, illuminating me like a spotlight. Cassandra stood there in the doorway, framed by the glow of the hall behind her. Her hair was perfect, curled and pinned just right, her makeup flawless even under the harsh light. She clutched a champagne glass in one hand, her lips still curved in the faint echo of a smile that hadn't fully faded yet. Her eyes locked on me, confusion hardening into something sharper. "Why are you here?" she asked. Her voice was steady, cold. The laughter inside carried on without missing a beat, but outside, the night had gone silent. My breath caught in my throat, every excuse I'd rehearsed evaporating. It was just her and me, face to face, the question hanging in the air like a blade. And I knew the next words out of my mouth would decide everything. Cassandra didn't move from the doorway. The golden light from the rehearsal dinner poured out behind her, bathing her in a glow that almost made her look angelic. But her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, cut right through me. They weren't the eyes of a bride nervous about her big day, or cousin shocked to see me standing outside. No, they were the eyes of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "Why are you here?" she asked again, her tone clipped, as if she was already tired of repeating herself. I swallowed hard, but before I could say anything, she stepped closer, letting the door click shut behind her. The noise of the party muffled instantly, leaving only the two of us in the cool night air. Her heels crunched against the gravel as she walked up to me, her champagne glass still dangling between her fingers. She tilted her head, smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Let me guess, you were hoping someone would notice you out here. Maybe beg you to come inside?" Poor Lauren, always on the outside looking in. The words stung more than I wanted them to. They weren't just insults, they were reminders. A lifetime of them. Every birthday party where she got the biggest slice of cake. Every Christmas morning where her gifts gleamed under the tree while mine felt like afterthoughts. Every family dinner where my silence was mistaken for invisibility while her laughter filled the room like a spotlight. She sipped her champagne and sighed, as if my very presence was exhausting. "Let me make this simple for you." She lowered the glass, her eyes locking on mine with a glare sharp enough to cut through bone. "You weren't invited because you're pathetic. Always have been. Always will be. Don't ruin this for me." The words should have broken me. A younger version of myself might have cried, might have run off into the night and buried my face in a pillow until the shame burned out. But something was different now. Maybe it was the stolen money burning a hole in my mind. Maybe it was Derek's cheating snake. Maybe it was the years of being treated like the family stain. But I didn't flinch this time. I just stayed at her. And as I did, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. Cassandra wasn't the victim I had tried to imagine she was. She wasn't just clueless, caught up in Derek's lies and our mother's manipulations. No, she was part of it. She was part of the cruelty, the smirk, the champagne, the casual way she dismissed me like trash. This wasn't new. This had always been her. All those childhood moments came rushing back, but with sharper clarity. The time she accidentally told everyone at school I had failed my math test. The way she used to remind me, in front of everyone, that I didn't have the same clothes, the same friends, the same future. She had always been the golden cousin because she knew how to keep me painted as the shadow. I saw it now. I saw it all. And instead of feeling small, I felt something else rising in me, something dangerous. Cassandra leaned closer, her voice dropping into a low hiss. "You think you're the one who's going to ruin this wedding? Please, no one even remembers you exist. So do yourself a favor and disappear. Quietly." I let the silence hang between us for a moment, long enough for her smirk to widen as if she thought she'd already won. But then, slowly, I felt the corners of my own mouth curl upward. For the first time in years, I smirked back. Her expression faltered, just slightly, just enough. "Then you should pray I don't show up," I whispered. Her eyes flickered, a flash of unease breaking through her smug exterior. For the first time, it wasn't me who looked small. It was her. And that was the moment I knew. This game was only just beginning. The night before the wedding didn't feel like any night I had ever lived through. It wasn't just nerves. And it wasn't just anger. It was a storm inside me, sharp, alive, dangerous. My apartment was small, one bedroom, barely enough space to stretch out, but that night it felt like a war room. My kitchen table became my battlefield. I laid everything out in front of me like weapons. The cheap wooden surface groaned under the weight of secrets I wasn't supposed to have. The USB drive glared back at me, tiny but deadly, filled with photos of Derek tangled up with Evelyn, his hands where they didn't belong, his smile smug and unbothered. Beside it sat the financial documents, proof of what Marjorie had stolen, my grandmother's pension money, my inheritance, drained like it had never mattered. I ran my fingers over the printouts, the cold numbers twisting into chains of betrayal. And then there were the text messages. Jake had forwarded them to me, whispers between Derek and Evelyn, ugly, mocking words about Cassandra, about how easy it was to play her. Each piece of evidence was heavier than it should have been. They weren't just files or messages. They were my family's rut, crystallized and undeniable. I stacked them, organized them, stared at them until my eyes blurred. And then I started packing. An old black backpack, frayed at the corners, became my arsenal case. USB in a padded sleeve. Documents folded into a neat envelope. Phone fully charged. Screenshots backed up. Every move careful, precise. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. A knock at the door pulled me out of my focus. I opened it to find Jake leaning against the hallway wall, his hoodie pulled up, shadows draped across his face. He looked tired, like he'd been carrying this secret longer than me. Maybe he had. "You're really doing this," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His eyes scanned the table, the papers, the bag. He let out a low whistle. This could destroy your whole family." The words hung heavy between us. Destroy my family. I thought about that, really thought about it. I pictured Cassandra in her white dress, Derek grinning at the altar, Marjorie sitting proud in the front row, Aunt Judith fanning herself with smug delight. And then I pictured myself, sitting outside, invisible, erased, humiliated. I zipped the bag slowly, the sound sharp in the silence. "They destroyed me first," I said. My voice didn't shake. Jake studied me for a long moment. Maybe he was waiting for me to break, to back down, to let the guilt wash me away. But it never came. What came instead was something colder, a steadiness I didn't know I had. He nodded, almost like he respected me more for it. Then he pulled something from his pocket. 2 laminated passes, glossy under the dim light. Early access. For the setup crew. Got them from a friend. I took one, the laminate cool against my skin. "You'll get in before anyone else," he explained. "If you're serious about this, it's the cleanest shot you'll have." I slipped the pass into my bag, tucked between the evidence and my phone. The plan was forming, piece by piece. Walk into the lion's den before the lions even stirred. Set everything in place. Wait. Strike. The rest of the night was quiet, but it wasn't restful. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring out at the empty streetlights, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the city beyond. My heart beat slow, steady, like it knew what was coming. At 3 a.m, I stood, changed into dark clothes, tied my hair back, laced my sneakers tight. I glanced at the photo frame on my nightstand, my grandmother smiling, her arm around me at the county fair, her laugh frozen in time. She deserved better than to have her savings stolen and her granddaughter erased. I whispered to her, though no one could hear me, "This is for you." By 4, Jake was waiting outside in his beat-up car. We didn't talk much on the drive. The roads were empty, the town asleep. Every red light felt like a countdown. My hands clenched and unclenched in my lap. When Willow Creek Banquet Hall came into view, its white columns glowing under the street lamps, I felt the weight of everything pressed down on me. This was it, the place where they wanted to celebrate, to smile, to parade their lies in front of everyone. And tomorrow, it would become something else. Jake parked in the back, near the loading dock. The air was crisp, cool enough to bite at my skin. We slipped out quietly, the passes clipped to our shirts, the bag slung over my shoulder. Every step toward the building echoed louder than it should have. Inside, the hall was dark, still dressed in silence. Tables stood in neat rows, draped in white linen. Crystal glasses glimmered faintly in the shadows. The smell of fresh flowers clung to the air, sweet and suffocating. I paused in the doorway, my chest rising and falling, the bag heavy on my shoulder. This was the stage. And tomorrow, I wouldn't be the outcast. I would be the storm. Jake touched my arm lightly, pulling me back from the spiral. His voice was barely a whisper. Once you do this, there's no going back. I looked at him, my jaw set. I never planned to go back. And then, without another word, I stepped farther into the hall, the darkness swallowing me whole. I was inside, sneaking into the venue with Jake's help. The war had officially begun. The morning sun hit Willow Creek Banquet Hall like a spotlight, making the white columns gleam as if the building itself had been scrubbed clean for the occasion. Cars lined the lot, polished to a shine, guests stepping out in tuxedos and silk dresses that shimmered like they belonged in a magazine spread. Music drifted faintly from inside, soft strings warming up, the hum of chatter spilling through the open doors. I stood at the edge of it all, just another shadow in the chaos. Black dress, hair pulled back, face calm. Nobody looked twice. Nobody ever did. That was my advantage now. Inside, the hall had been transformed. Chandeliers glowed with golden light, bouncing off the mirrors and glass. Roses and lilies filled every corner, their fragrance heavy, cloying. The tables gleamed with crystal and polished silverware. Everything screamed wealth, elegance, perfection, the kind of staged beauty that demanded no one look too closely. The guests moved like actors in a play, laughing too loudly, hugging too tightly, smiling as if their teeth could hide the poison beneath. Aunts in sequin gowns whispered about how much money was spent. Uncles boasted about the wine selection. Cassandra floated through it all in her gown, radiant, her face frozen into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And Derek, he looked smug, confident, the king of the day, his hand glued to her waist as if possession was love. I lingered near the back, slipping between waiters carrying trays and staff checking details. My borrowed staff badge swung gently from my chest. Nobody questioned me. They never saw me unless they wanted to. That had always been my curse. Today, it was my shield. The music swelled, the first guests settling into their seats. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, the performance of a family united. But as I scanned the room, my gaze locked on Marjorie. My mother. She was in the front row, dressed in navy silk, pearls resting against her collarbone. She looked proud, radiant even, as if she'd built all of this with her own hands. But when her eyes swept the room and landed on me, her face cracked. For the briefest second, her smile slipped. Her fingers clenched, her clutch tight, knuckles white. Panic flashed across her face like lightning, sharp, feist, undeniable. She knew I wasn't supposed to be here. She knew what my presence meant. Our eyes locked. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, her lips trembling just enough to betray her calm facade. Maybe it was leave. Maybe it was please. It didn't matter, because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one who panicked. I tilted my head, letting the faintest smack tug at the corner of my mouth. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my bag, brushing my fingers over the evidence tucked inside. The USB, the documents, the texts, every lie they tried to bury. Jake was across the room, standing near the sound booth, blending in with the staff. Our eyes met. I gave the signal, just a small nod. But it was enough. The wedding had begun. The storm was about to break. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound that came before the chaos. It wasn't loud, not at first. It was the tiniest scratch of static, the faint crack of silence, and then the music that had been filling the Willow Creek ballroom, the carefully curated playlist of soft jazz and string covers, just died. People froze midlife, forks hung in the air halfway to mouths, and a heavy kind of confusion spread across the room. Weddings were supposed to be seamless, flawless. This wasn't seamless. It was the sound of the first crack forming in the perfect facade. I felt my heart beat, not in my chest but in my throat, like a trapped bird fluttering to break free. From the corner where I was standing, mostly hidden by a massive floral arrangement dripping with white orchids, I gripped the stem of my champagne glass so hard I thought it might shatter in my hand. Then, right on cue, the ballroom screens lit up. At first, the guest smiled, assuming it was part of the rehearsal video, or maybe a slideshow of Derek and Cassandra's story. Something sweet. Something safe. The first picture hit the screens, and every ounce of sweetness drained from the air like someone had opened a window in January. It was Derek, his face clear, too clear to deny, leaning in toward Evelyn. Her hand was pressed against his chest, lips tangled with his, both of them locked in a kiss that couldn't be explained away as a mistake or trick of the camera. Gasps shot through the crowd like gunfire. Someone dropped a glass, and it exploded against the tile with a sharp crack. Cassandra's scream didn't come yet. She was too stunned for that. She just stood at the altar in her pristine white dress, staring up at the evidence of her own humiliation in high definition. The slideshow didn't stop. No mercy, no pause. Photo after photo flashed, Derek and Evelyn in parking lots, in hotel lobbies, laughing in restaurants. Derek's hands on her waist, her lipstick on his collar. I watched the truth bleed across every inch of that hole. Screams finally came. Shouts. Aunt Judith's voice, shrill, hysterical, rose above the others, demanding that someone turn it off, demanding that someone fix it. Cassandra swayed, her veil slipping as her knees buckled. Bridesmaids rushed to her, but she shook them off like they were intruders. And me? I didn't move. I didn't blink. I had prepared for this moment, dreamed it into existence night after night, and now that it was here, I stood in the center of the storm and let it wash over me. Derek spun around, searching for someone to blame, his face red, his jaw clenching so tight it looked like it might crack. "Who did this?" he shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of panic. Evelyn tried to shrink behind him, as if the screens weren't literally painting her betrayal 20 feet tall. The guests couldn't stop staring. Marjorie's eyes, sharp, piercing, swept the room like knives, and when they landed on me, tucked in my corner, her face twisted. She knew. She didn't have proof yet, but mothers always know when the knife has been slipped between their ribs by their own blood. Then the slideshow shifted. Not to photos this time. To documents. Jake had stitched them together perfectly, PDFs scrolling one after the other. Bank transfers, pension withdrawals, signatures that tied it all to Derek and Marjorie. The screen screamed louder than any voice in that room ever could. Wedding paid for with stolen pension money. The words crawled across the bottom in bold, undeniable type. The room broke open. Elderly men, retired, frail, stood up from their seats, faces pale as ash, murmuring to each other. "That's my company's fund," one whispered, voice cracking. A woman clutched her husband's arm and shook her head in disbelief. Every guest's face reflected betrayal. This wasn't just scandal anymore. It was crime. Cassandra's scream finally erupted then, raw and animalistic, ripping through the hall. She fell to her knees, her gown pooling around her like a shattered crown. Bridesmaids tried again to lift her, but she lashed out, shoving one so hard she stumbled. "You knew." Cassandra wailed, pointing at Marjorie, tears streaming down her face. "You always knew." Marjorie stepped forward, her voice dangerously calm, trying to salvage control. "This is nonsense. Lies. Someone has doctored these. You all know how people manipulate media." But no one listened. The guests weren't on her side anymore. The air had shifted. The lies they had polished for years were dissolving in front of hundreds of witnesses. Derek stormed toward the DJ booth, his suit jacket flaring out, sweat beading across his forehead. "Turn it off," Shut it down now. He grabbed cables, yanked wires, but Jake had locked the system down tight. No escape. Every pull of a cord just made the images burn brighter, the whispers grow sharper, the rage ignite hotter. And me? I couldn't help it. I smiled. Not the smug smile of victory, not yet. But the smallest curl of my lips, the kind you make when you finally breathe after being suffocated for too long. Someone yelled Derek's name, spitting it like a curse. An older man in a suit, Mr. Harlan, I recognized him, shoved his way to the front, his hands trembling. That's my pension money. My wife's medical bills, Derek. You stole from us. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. You stole from all of us. The crowd erupted. It wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a courtroom, a mob, a reckoning. Derek's face twisted into pure rage, veins bulging at his temple. He pointed across the room, straight at me. This is her. She did this. My crazy sister. All eyes shifted. For a second, the spotlight landed on me. My heart should have stopped, but instead, I lifted my glass, tilted it toward him like a toast, and sipped. Calm. Controlled. Exactly what I had promised myself I'd be. Lauren, Marjorie hissed, her voice cutting through the noise like glass dragged across stone. Her mask cracked then, her perfect society smile gone. How dare you? How dare you do this to your family? I stepped forward finally, out of the shadows, into the center of the chaos I had unleashed. No, Mother, I said, my voice steady enough that people hushed to hear. You did this to your family. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. That was the moment the screams died. Not completely, but enough that silence pulled thick around us. Guests stared at me not like I was crazy, but like I was the only sane one in the room. Cassandra, still crumpled on the floor, lifted her tear-streaked face, eyes burning through me. For a moment, I thought I'd see gratitude, relief that someone had revealed the truth before vows were spoken. But no, there was no gratitude in her, only venom. This is your fault, she sobbed, pointing at me with a trembling hand. You wanted to ruin me. You've always hated me. You couldn't stand to see me happy. Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, but I didn't flinch. No, Cassandra, I whispered, almost gently, though I knew she'd hear it as cruelty. I couldn't stand to see you living a lie. Marjorie lunged at me then, grabbing my wrist so hard my skin burned under her grip. Enough. You will regret this. Do you hear me? I stared into her eyes, seeing the cracks spreading through the fortress she'd built around her reputation. I already regret giving you the chance to raise me, I said, voice low enough only she could hear. But I don't regret this. The crowd had turned fully now. Guests pushed chairs aside, some storming toward the exits, others advancing on Derek like wolves circling prey. The police would be here soon. I knew it. Jake knew it. We had triggered something that couldn't be contained in whispers or denial anymore. And still, I stood there, watching everything unravel exactly as it was supposed to. The DJ booth sparked as Derek ripped at wires, finally killing the power. The screens went black. Silence hovered for one long, aching beat. But the damage was already done. The truth hung in the air thicker than smoke, and no blackout could erase it. Marjorie turned to the crowd, her voice cracking in desperation. Please, everyone, don't listen to this. It's nothing but lies. But the crowd wasn't listening anymore. The only sound left was the low murmur of betrayal, the sound of foundations collapsing. And in that silence, with the weight of the empire crumbling around them, I let myself finally breathe. The battle wasn't over, not yet. But the war had been declared, and I had just fired the first shot. The ballroom became a madhouse the second the screens went black. It was like cutting the music at a funeral. No one knew whether to cry, scream, or run. The air was thick with perfume and sweat and the sour tang of panic. I could hear glasses tipping, silverware clattering, the sharp crack of a chair skidding across the floor. And right in the middle of it all was Cassandra, her scream tearing through the chaos like a fire alarm no one could silence. She clawed at her veil, ripped it free, and threw it to the ground like it was poison. Her makeup was streaked, black rivers down her cheeks, her face twisted in a way I had never seen before, feral, devastated, almost unrecognizable. "You liar!" she shrieked at Derek, her voice breaking. "You swore to me! You swore to me!" She grabbed at his suit jacket with both hands, shaking him like a rag doll, until 2 bridesmaids had to pry her off him. Her whole body convulsed with sobs, her shoulders heaving as if the weight of the betrayal might break her spine. Derek tried to put on that same old smirk he always used to weasel out of trouble, but it slipped off his face almost immediately under the glaze of hundreds of eyes. "It's not what it looks like," he started, his voice too loud, too desperate. "It's exactly what it looks like." Cassandra's voice cracked on the last word, high-pitched, guttural. She sank to the floor again, screaming into her hands, shaking her head over and over like maybe, if she moved fast enough, she could shake this reality loose. Aunt Judith, God bless her melodrama, gave a gasp that rattled the chandeliers. Her eyes rolled back like she was auditioning for a soap opera, and she crumpled sideways onto Uncle Frank, who barely managed to keep her upright. "Somebody call a doctor!" Frank shouted, his voice cracking as he fanned her face with a napkin. Marjorie, in contrast, was stone. Her face pale, her lipstick smeared at the corner from where she'd bitten her lip too hard, but her voice, when it came, was sharp as a blade. "This is a lie," she said to the crowd, loud enough to be heard over Cassandra sobbing. "This is slander, and whoever orchestrated this will pay for it. None of this is true. None of it." The guests weren't buying it. You could see it in the way they turned on her, eyes narrowing, whispers hissing like snakes. She was losing control of the story, and for Marjorie, that was the greatest sin of all. Then I saw him, Dad. He wasn't shouting, wasn't denying, wasn't even moving at first. He just sat in his seat, hands gripping the edge of the tablecloth so hard that the veins in his forearms bulged. His eyes, wide and glassy, stared not at Derek, not at Cassandra, but at Marjorie. His face crumpled as though years of suspicion had just been confirmed in one brutal moment. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked like dry wood. You drained it, didn't you? You drained her inheritance, your own mother's pension." The room went still again for half a beat. Marjorie whipped her head toward him, her jaw tightening. "Harold, don't." But he cut her off, his voice rising, booming with years of swallowed rage. "Don't you dare, Marjorie. Don't you dare lie to me again." He slammed his fist onto the table so hard silverware jumped, plates rattled, and half the room jumped with it. His voice broke on the last words. "How could you?" For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. He looked like a man watching his entire life dissolve in his hands. Then, like gasoline on a fire, Evelyn's voice cut through the storm. Calm, smug, cold. She stood there, smoothing the front of her dress like this was all beneath her, her smile a dagger she wanted everyone to see. "Don't act so surprised," she said, looking directly at Cassandra. "He promised me months ago he was going to leave you. Said you were a phase. Said I was the one he really loved." The room exploded again. Shouts, curses, someone throwing a napkin like it was a weapon. Cassandra's sobs turned into full-body screams, her fists pounding the tile as if she could shatter it. She crawled forward on her hands and knees, lunging toward Evelyn, but two groomsmen caught her by the arms, dragging her back before she could claw Evelyn's face off. "You lying slut." Cassandra's voice tore at her throat. "You're lying. Tell me you're lying." But Evelyn didn't flinch. She tilted her chin, her smile widening, her eyes locked on Cassandra like a predator savoring its kill. "He loves me," she said simply, "and he always will." That was it. The last thread Cassandra had been clinging to snapped in front of all of us. She collapsed again, not screaming this time, just a hollow wail that sounded like it came from the deepest pit of her chest. Her bridesmaids huddled around her, but even their arms couldn't shield her from the wreckage. Derek's face twisted, panic and fury colliding. "Shut up, Evelyn," he barked, his voice rising above everything. "You shut your mouth right now." But Evelyn just laughed, a low, cruel laugh that carried across the entire room. That's when Derek snapped. He shoved a chair out of his way and stormed toward the doors, his movements wild, his face flushed scarlet. Guests moved aside like he was contagious. "I'm done," he muttered, then louder, "I'm done with all of this." His voice cracked as he shoved a groomsman out of the way. "I don't need this circus." And I knew this was my moment. Before he could make it to the doors, before he could vanish into the night and hide from what he'd done, I stepped forward. My heels clicked against the marble as I left the shadows behind, my path deliberate, cutting straight through the wreckage of flowers, spilled champagne, and broken lives. My heart pounded, but my voice, when I finally spoke, was ice. "Going somewhere, Derek." He stopped dead. His shoulders stiffened, his fists clenched, and when he turned, his eyes locked on mine with all the hatred he'd been holding back since the moment those screens lit up. The crowd went silent again, everyone waiting, everyone holding their breath, as I stepped directly in front of him, blocking his path. "You don't get to run," I whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. And in that instant, I knew the real reckoning was only beginning. The room was a battlefield now, shattered centerpieces, champagne pooling on the tiles, voices clashing, gasps colliding with curses. But when I stepped fully into the light, the chaos stilled like someone had cut a string. Hundreds of eyes shifted toward me, phones lifting like weapons, the little red recording dots blinking. And I felt it, the power, the kind of power they had stolen from me all my life. Now it was mine. Derek's chest heaved, his fists balled so tight his knuckles looked bloodless. Marjorie's lipstick was smeared at the corners of her mouth, her eyes darting left and right like a cornered animal searching for an escape. Cassandra sat crumpled on the floor, her white dress stained with wine, makeup carved into black streaks. And me? I stood tall, calm, cold. My voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You all wanted to know why I wasn't invited tonight," I said. My words echoed under the chandeliers. They said it was because I'd ruined the day, because I'd exposed the truth. Well, here we are. Murmurs rippled. The guests leaned forward, eager, phones trembling as they caught every syllable. I turned my gaze to Derek first. "Here's your golden groom," I said, my tone sharp as glass. Cheating on the bride with her maid of honor, whispering promises he never meant to keep, smiling in Cassandra's face while sneaking out hotel doors with Evelyn. That's the man you all came here to celebrate. Gasps, shouts, someone swore under their breath. Derek barked back, "Shut your mouth," but his voice cracked like glass under pressure. He lunged half a step toward me, but stopped when half a dozen phones zoomed in closer. His face was red, veins bulging at his temple. I didn't flinch. I shifted my gaze slowly, deliberately, to Marjorie, my mother. "And this woman," I said, the words landing heavy, the mother who told me I wasn't good enough to stand in this room. She helped cover it all. She kept Derek's secret. She drained my grandmother's pension, the money that should have been my inheritance, to pay for this wedding. All to make Cassandra look like the perfect princess. The room broke open again. A chorus of outrage, disbelief, curses. Phones lifted higher. Someone shouted, "Is that true?" Another yelled, "You stole from your own daughter." Marjorie's voice rose, desperate, shrill. "Lies. All of it lies." Her hands flailed in the air as if she could claw the words out of existence. But the documents were already up on the screens. I had timed it perfectly. The paper trail glared at everyone in cold, undeniable black ink. "Don't bother," I said flatly, my eyes never leaving hers. "It's all there. Every dollar. Every signature." She shook her head, a frantic, jerking motion. "You don't understand, Lauren. I did this for—" "No," I cut in, my voice steel. You did it for Cassandra. You did it because she was always the one who mattered. The golden cousin. The perfect daughter you wished you had. Cassandra's sobs cracked the air, raw and animal. She pressed her palms into her ears like she could block out the truth. But it was too late. Every guest, every friend, every family member was watching her life unravel in real time, their cameras capturing every angle. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them all to sit in it, to drown in it. Then I spoke again, slow, deliberate. This family spent years making me the black sheep. They whispered behind my back, laughed when I stumbled, told me I was nothing. Tonight, I'm not the one exposed. You are. The room erupted into chaos again. People shouting, guests backing away from Marjorie, reporters already tweeting, hashtags probably exploding online in real time. The phones didn't lower. They followed Derek's every twitch, Marjorie's frantic denials, Cassandra's collapse. And through it all, I stood still, center stage, in control. I took a long breath, then turned toward the doors. My heels clicked across the tile, each step echoing with finality. The cameras followed me, guests whispering, some gasping at the audacity. But just before I crossed the threshold, I stopped. Slowly, I turned back. My eyes swept the room. The wreckage, the ruined bride, the shattered groom, my mother's pale face trembling under the weight of exposure. I let the silence hang one last time. Then, cold, steady, I said, "Now everyone knows the truth." The words landed like a blade dropped in the center of the room. Sharp, final. And then I walked out. I tamed, letting the silence sit, the weight of my words pressing on every single person in that room. Cassandra sat crumpled like broken glass. Derek's jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might snap. Marjorie's hands shook as she fumbled for her pearls, her denial tangled in the air like smoke no one believed anymore. And then I walked. Calm. Measured. Every click of my heels echoed like a gavel in a courtroom. Phones were still up, capturing me, documenting me, dissecting me. I didn't rush. I wanted every second to stick. As soon as I pushed through the heavy double doors of the banquet hall, the outside air hit me like a flood. The muffled chaos from inside bled into the night, but it was nothing compared to what waited. Reporters, cameras, microphones. They had been tipped off, probably by a waiter or a cousin who couldn't resist the chance to cash in on the drama. The flashes blinded me as soon as I stepped onto the steps of the hotel. The crowd of journalists surged forward, voices overlapping like a wave crashing too hard to make out the words. "Lauren, is it true Derek was stealing from pension funds? Do you regret humiliating your sister on her wedding day? Some are calling you a hero, others a monster. What do you say to that?" The questions hit from every side. I didn't flinch. I didn't break my pace. My lips pressed into something between a smile and a warning. I wasn't here to defend myself. Behind the reporters, I caught the guests spilling out in their dresses and tuxedos, whispering, staring, recording. The words traveled through them like wildfire. "Did you see her? She didn't even blink. She destroyed them, right there in front of everyone. No, that was cruel. That was monstrous. She's a hero. She saved Cassandra from marrying a fraud. Or maybe she just wanted revenge. You could see it in her eyes." The crowd split into two camps, the ones who admired me and the ones who feared me. And both reactions fed me. I stopped halfway down the steps. The reporters surged closer, shoving microphones near my face, flashes popping like fireworks. For a second, the air was thick, the night buzzing with their hunger. I turned slightly, just enough for them to see my profile under the harsh light. My voice came out steady, cold, and theatrical, slicing clean through their noise. "Now everyone knows the truth." The words hung in the air again, but this time not in the private cage of a ballroom. This time they were for the world. Cameras captured it. Live feeds sent it racing online. Whispers turned into headlines before I even reached the curb. Behind me, I heard someone, maybe Aunt Judith, maybe a neighbor, say it aloud, her voice trembling like she'd just witnessed the apocalypse. She's not afraid of any of them. The others followed. Hero. Monster. Destroyer. Savior. The labels collided, none of them sticking, all of them sticking. And I kept walking, straight into the chaos, the night alive with the fire I had lit and left burning. The weeks that followed didn't feel real. It was like time bent, like everything that exploded that night in the ballroom was still echoing but in slower, heavier ripples. I thought the world would move on after a few days, that some other scandal would push ours off people's feeds. But no, our story lived. It crawled out of that hotel, past the guests, past the reporters, past the town. It became something bigger, nastier, permanent. Marjorie tried to keep her head high the first week. She showed up at church like nothing had happened, pearls around her neck, lips pressed into that practice smile she wore whenever she thought people were beneath her. But people didn't buy it anymore. I saw her the Sunday after the wedding, standing near the entrance like she always did, waiting for people to fawn over her. Except they didn't. They walked past her. They whispered. Some didn't even hide their smirks. One woman muttered, loud enough for half the room to hear, stole money for her daughter's wedding, and she has the nerve to wear pearls. Marjorie's face stiffened, but she didn't leave. Not yet. By the second week, she stopped coming altogether. The invitations dried up. The friends who used to call her every day suddenly had better things to do. Even the women she gossiped with, the ones who pretended to adore her, cut her off. No one wanted to be tied to a scandal that deep, not when financial crimes and stolen pensions were part of the story. She'd walk through the grocery store and people would stare. Someone filmed her arguing with the cashier about coupons, and it went viral on TikTok under the caption, "From Society Queen to Penny Pincher." Her fall was public, brutal, and exactly what she deserved. Cassandra was quieter about it. She didn't post anything. She didn't rant. She didn't defend herself. She just disappeared. A week after the wedding, the news broke that she'd filed for an annulment. The documents got leaked online, probably by someone at the courthouse. The details spread. Irreconcilable differences, allegations of fraud. Evelyn, of course, vanished with Derek. But Cassandra's name was everywhere, the bride who got cheated on at the altar. The woman whose family empire crumbled before her vows were even finished. People pitied her, and I could almost feel bad. Almost. But the truth was she'd played her part in all of it. She'd let herself believe Derek was her fairy tale, even when the red flags were waving in her face. She ignored them, like Mom always ignored Marjorie's cruelty. And maybe she didn't steal the money herself, but she benefited from it. She basked in it. That's why my pity only went so far. As for Derek, he was gone. Vanished like smoke. No social media. No job. Rumors spread that he fled the state. Some people said he'd run off with Evelyn to Florida. Others swore they'd seen him working under the table in some bar in Tennessee. No one really knew. But the one thing everyone agreed on, he couldn't show his face here again. Not after what he'd done. Not after everyone had seen the photos and the documents with their own eyes. He wasn't just a cheating fiancé anymore. He was a thief, a con man. And I was the one who exposed him. For weeks, lawyers and investigators swirled around us. The stolen pension money became more than gossip. It became a case. Depositions. Statements. Legal documents thicker than dictionaries. I sat across from men in suits, telling them every detail I knew, every conversation I'd overheard. And when it was done, when the smoke cleared, something unexpected happened. My inheritance, the money Marjorie had tried to reroute into Cassandra's dream wedding, came back to me. Not all of it, but enough. Enough that the lawyer called me one afternoon and said, "It's secured. Legally yours. No one can touch it now." I hung up the phone and sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since Mom died, I felt like she was on my side again. Like I hadn't completely lost everything she wanted me to have. But the money wasn't the point. Not really. The point was that I had won. With that money, I didn't buy a car or blow it on revenge shopping sprees. I did something that made even me stop and think. I enrolled in community college. The first day I walked onto campus, I felt out of place. I wasn't the perfect freshman anymore, the girl who should have been at a big university with her whole future mapped out. I was older than some of the kids, carrying scars they couldn't see. But as I sat in those classrooms, listening to professors talk about history and literature and psychology, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, I was building something instead of just surviving. Still, the whispers followed me. I'd walk past groups of students who had seen the viral clips, the headlines, the TikToks with millions of views. Some of them would nudge each other, point, whisper my name. That's her. The wedding girl. The one who ruined her sister in front of everyone. I pretended not to hear, but I always did. And sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through the endless threads online. Some people called me a hero. Others said I was cruel, vindictive, heartless. Some compared me to a whistleblower. Others called me a homewrecker, even though Derek and Evelyn had done that all on their own. The truth sat somewhere in between. I'd replay that night over and over in my head. The gasps, the screams, Cassandra's collapse, Marjorie's face when her empire crumbled in seconds. I told myself it had to be done, that exposing the truth was the only way to stop them. But there were nights when the silence pressed in too heavy, when the glow of my phone showed me another viral clip of Cassandra crying, and I wondered if I'd gone too far. Did I humiliate her because she deserved it? Or because part of me wanted her to hurt as much as I had? Sometimes I'd think about Derek, wherever he was. Maybe he was broke. Maybe he was still lying to someone new, still spinning stories about forever while looking for the next wallet to drain. I thought about Evelyn, smug in that ballroom, and wondered if she still felt smug now, or if she realized she'd gambled her whole life on a con man. And then I'd think about Cassandra. I'd picture her in her apartment, sitting in the dark, staring at the wedding dress she never got to wear down the aisle. And for a flicker, a sharp little flicker, I'd feel guilty. Not enough to undo what I did, but enough to remind me I wasn't spotless in all this. People love clean villains and clean heroes, but real life isn't clean. It's messy, gray, ugly. Maybe I ruined their wedding. Or maybe I just gave them the honesty they never wanted. Was Lauren justified? Or was this revenge too much? Comment below.